Hey, do you ever feel like your business, your baby, the thing that you've poured your heart and soul into is like a runaway train and it's all you can do to just keep it on the tracks? Listen, I've been there, okay? From a growing family to scaling a business, I've learned that success is not about working harder, it's about working smarter. And that's in any area of life. But today, we're going to be talking about and diving into navigating challenges as your business grows. And more specifically, I want to dive into the complex art of communication so that you can stay in your lane as a leader and be able to build a team that can take your business to the next level. So buckle up, because this episode of Own the Exit is about to change the way you build your business. Welcome back to another episode of Own the Exit. I'm your host, Caleb Edwards, and I'm here solo in the studio today. Aaron, our co-host, he's in Canada right now, spending some time with family up there. So it looks like you're stuck with me today, but I promise to over-deliver on today's episode. Today, we're going to be talking about navigating challenges around building your business, specifically navigating one of the biggest challenges that entrepreneurs face when their business is growing, and that's the challenge of communication. So whether you've got a business that's currently in a strong growth mode or growth trajectory, or you're prepping and getting things ready for growth mode, or maybe you're listening to this podcast and you are currently a solopreneur, but you're looking to the future and trying to forecast and get ready for the growth that your company is going to experience, regardless of where you're at in the kind of spectrum of business growth. Today's topic applies to you, I promise. And I promise that you're going to thank me for it at the end of this episode. Let's start with a big question. Why is communication such a big challenge when a business is growing? Brooks' Law puts it pretty simply. Adding manpower, and Brooks' Law is anchored by this adage, right? That says adding manpower to a late software project makes it later. It goes on to say people and months are interchangeable commodities only when tasks can be partitioned among many workers with no lines of communication between them. So let me break that down and make it ultra simple. Adding more people to a team, to a project, to your company does not create efficiency. It creates complexity. You would think that by adding manpower, that things would just get done faster, get done easier, right? As they say, more hands make for light work, but that only really works if those people don't actually need to communicate with each other. And in the real world of today, in today's economy, in today's business environment, we're not hiring employees to simply pick up heavy objects together and move them from one place to another in a straight line, right? A growing business requires a growing team to be able to solve the challenges of that growing business. But the problem is those teams have to be able to work together. And that is where communicating is absolutely critical. And therein lies a much bigger challenge for a growing business. I want you to let this fact settle in. If you've got a team of 3 people, you and 2 employees, then there are 3 lines of communication that need to be managed. The communication between you and employee number 1, you and employee number 2, and the communication between employee number 1 and employee number 2. But if you just add 4 people, how many lines of communication now exist with a team of 7? In a team of 7, there are 21 lines of communication. And so now there are 3 times more opportunities for communication breakdowns than there are people working in your company. Add another 4 employees, go from 7 employees to 11 employees. Now there's 55 lines of communication in your business, or 55 new opportunities for communication breakdown. Scale your company to 50 people. Now there's 1,225 lines of communication that are all happening, and those lines of communication have to be managed. Can you see how this could become a big challenge for a company that's growing or a company that grows really rapidly or really fast? I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say it both anecdotally as well as based on my own personal experience. Failure to build processes and infrastructure around managing communication in your business will be the death of a growing company. So what I want to do today is give you 4 keys to navigating communication challenges so that you can get ahead of most entrepreneurs and business owners in this area. And key number 1 is this. It's the rule of 3 and 10. There's probably no other situation in my life that has proven the legitimacy of the rule of 3 and 10 than the growth of my family. My wife and I experienced growing pains when we went from having 1 child to having 2. But when we went from having 2 children to having 3, the growing pains were significantly greater. The way that my wife and I managed our household had to dramatically change when we went from 2 to 3 children, because we couldn't say anymore, hey, you take that one, I'll take that one, and we'll sync up later. The things that I had become accustomed to doing, a 45-minute to an hour-long bedtime routine with each child where I got to hold them in my lap and read them a book and pray for them and do all of these different things, suddenly that became significantly more complex and difficult because my wife's in the other room nursing a newborn, and I've got 2 toddlers trying to wrangle them together, read them a book, pray for them, do all of this stuff, and get them in bed. And I promise you that the level of stress that elevated in me at that time because of having to adjust to going from 2 kids to going to 3 kids, it was dramatic and significant. And we only added 1 person to the house. And so it seems, just adding 1 more person wouldn't be that big of a deal. Management of the household became significantly harder. I like to think of it I'm a big football fan, right? And so there's man-to-man defense. It's, hey, you pick your man and stay on him. And then there's zone defense, where it's you just got to cover an area of the field. And anytime somebody comes in there, you got to take care of business, right? That's what my wife and I had to do when we went from 2 to 3 kids. We couldn't play man-to-man defense anymore because we were outnumbered. We now had 3 people to manage. There were only 2 of us. And being able to adjust based on the rule of 3 and 10 and forecast and prepare for the adjustments that need to happen will absolutely help keep you ahead of the curve in your business. See, the rule of 3 and 10 is this. As your company grows in multiples of 3 and 10, and I'm talking specifically about employees and team members on your team, right? When you go from having 2 to having 3 people on your team, then suddenly your management and your reporting and protocols and processes need to be put in place to manage lines of communication. And those will work. Those protocols and processes will work until you get to about 10. And then things need to change and be refined. And so in multiples of 3 and 10, you need to be prepared and be projecting and looking ahead at how am I going to adjust management and communication processes as the company grows. Think of it this way. When you get to 3 people, some simple protocol has got to be put in place to report back on the communication that happens so that everybody stays in the loop, because there's conversations now that are happening that you're not a part of or that one other person in the team may not be a part of. There's got to be a way to communicate back on that so that everyone stays in the loop. Then when you get to 10 people, you can no longer thrive as being in the role of being everybody's direct report. So now there's got to be some management protocols and some reporting that's put into place. And what that means is delegation, right? You're going to have to then begin removing yourself from being involved in every single decision that happens within your company. And this is one of the hardest things for entrepreneurs to do, because your company is your baby, right? And this is where your company has grown to the point where you're going to have to start trusting some other people to make decisions on behalf of your company. And it's like raising a child. When a child gets to a certain age, you have to start trusting other people to be able to speak into that child's life, right? They're going to start going to school. They're going to start being involved in church groups and things like that. And it's going to be to your benefit and to their benefit for there to be other people involved in speaking into that kid's life. It's the same with your company. As your company grows, there's going to be different moments in that growth where it's good and healthy for other people to start bringing vision and ideas and speaking into the life of that business. But that's going to involve you being able to delegate and trust other people. And that typically becomes absolutely critical to your company once you've grown from 3 to 10. And then though, everything's going to change again in multiples of 3 and 10. So when you get from 10 to 30, now your protocols are going to change again because the org chart gets expanded. Then when you get from 30 to 100, then from 100 to 300, then from 300 to 1,000 and on, most of you, your company may not ever grow that big, but being able to forecast based on the rule of 3 and 10 is going to help you stay ahead of the curve in making sure that you've got communication protocols and infrastructure in place to manage the conversations that are happening within your company. So the takeaway from key one is knowing and trusting in the legitimacy of the rule of 3 and 10 is going to help you forecast on communication processes when they need to be updated and refined. It's going to help you stay ahead of the curve rather than playing catch up. Key number 2, staying in your lane as a leader. Starting right now, and by right now, 10 years ago, right? The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today, right? Starting right now, you should be putting significant work and effort into identifying and knowing clearly what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. If you've not already done that exercise, then you should be looking to understand and have a significant amount of self-awareness so that you know what you're great at and what you're not great at. Because, and here's why this is important, at the core of efficient and healthy communication is this concept of trust. If you do not have trust that exists within your company culture, then your company's communication is going to suffer. But if people trust you, then they'll follow your lead. So how do you purchase trust? It starts with knowing your strengths and knowing your weaknesses. Your people, they'll admire you for your strengths. And the whole team's going to thrive when you are operating primarily in your unique abilities, your strengths. But not only will people admire you for your strengths, people will connect with you because of your weaknesses and because of your recognition and acknowledgement of those weaknesses. And if all you have is admiration without connection, then not only is your team not going to feel connected to you or valued by you, they'll also not be able to trust in their ability to make decisions without your constant oversight, your constant approval, and your constant attention. And that is going to steal your time from being able to walk in and operate in your unique abilities and strengths, because you're going to get pulled into every single conversation that you don't need to be in. And that's going to hurt the communication amongst your team because they're not going to feel confident in their ability to communicate things on things and make decisions and do things without your constant involvement and, checking the box and putting your stamp of approval on every single thing that happens. Now, a caveat is that when there are big, trajectory shifting decisions that need to be made, you obviously need to be driving the ship on making those decisions as the business owner. But when it's daily decisions that are repeatable, that are consistent, that, if the decision gets made wrong, it's not going to tank the company. It's just going to maybe create an opportunity to come up with a new solution. You need to be able to trust those people with those decisions and not have to be involved in all of those. But not only is it going to steal your time by getting sucked into all those conversations, it's going to crush your company's morale and your company. But if you're aware of your weaknesses, then you have the power to delegate. And to delegate simply means to trust someone else with an area of the business that's not really within your unique ability anyway. And delegation, that's where the money is. And here's why. We started this segment by talking about how do you purchase trust? I believe firmly and have seen and experienced in my life in every single area that trust purchases trust. If I choose to trust someone else, then that opens the door for them to trust me. If I do not trust them and make them earn my trust from the very beginning, then that sets that relationship off on a trajectory where they constantly feel like they're having to impress me, and there's no connection. Trust is something best purchased with the currency of trust. So I've made it a habit in my life not to make people earn my trust. I'm going to trust you, and distrust is what is earned. I'm going to give you trust, not going to make you earn trust from me, but you can earn distrust. And that's a big shift to make. It's trusting that people are going to do the right thing. They're going to do the thing that's in your best interest and the best interest of the company. And that's going to forge a connection where there's open lines of communication, right? And then if they do something that hurts the company, then that's the thing that earns distrust, and maybe some responsibilities get pulled away from them, or ultimately maybe we have to let them go. But by knowing your weaknesses and trusting your team to carry out those parts of the business, you're positioning your company, your team, your organization for healthy and efficient communication. Because ultimately, we've already talked a little bit about this, but as the visionary and business owner, your time is best spent on high impact activities. And you're going to have the most impact when you are the strongest and when you're walking in your strengths. You're going to have the most impact in those areas, the areas where you are strong. And your team is going to have the most impact in the areas where each of them is strongest. So getting the right people in the right roles sets you free to do things that really move the needle for your business, and it actually sets those people up for success in their role as well. And communication becomes so much easier when everyone's playing to their greatest strengths, and that includes you at the top. And that kind of leads me into key number 3. Key number 3 is building the right team, okay? There's so much that could be said here. Could probably do multiple podcasts just on this one subject, but I really just want to give you one main thing that is, I think, the most important to building the right team. What is the one thing that is most important to building the right team? And that is alignment of values. Building a company is building a community. Within every community, there is a culture. That culture is going to form one way or another. It's either going to be a result of your intentionality in establishing that culture and protecting that culture, or it's going to be a result of your apathy in establishing and protecting that culture. It will form. It'll either form because of you or in spite of you. The best companies, though, with the best communication, have the best cultures, and that doesn't happen by accident. I've heard it said before by Dave Ramsey, who's built a phenomenal company. Whether you agree with his debt strategies or not, no one can argue that Ramsey Solutions is an ironclad brand, and he's built a legitimately awesome company with an awesome company culture. And he has said before that to establish culture within your company, you have to do it when there are more of us than there are of them. More of us than there are of them. So us is the people that align with the values that you as the leader desire and champion, and them are the people that will simply adapt to whatever the culture, especially when a company's in early stages of growth. It's important to, number one, determine what your actual core values are as a company. Number two, you need to vet potential new hires based on how well they align with those core values. And number three, you need to regularly remind and champion those core values to your team. If you hire, especially early on, based on skill and experience alone, then you're going to constantly be fighting an uphill battle in terms of establishing a company culture. But if you lay the foundation of values and then narrow your hiring search to people who align with those values, especially early on, then you have a much better chance at establishing a healthy company culture. And when the culture is vibrant, when the culture is healthy, when the culture is positive, then again, efficient communication is a much easier problem to solve. So when you're building the right team, weigh values and culture more heavily on the front end than other very important factors like skill experience, etc. And here's why I believe that. Skill and experience is important, but skills can be developed. Experience can be gained, but values and culture are much more delicate and fragile. You want to protect those at all costs if you're going to grow exponentially. So key number 3, build the right team, and that starts with prioritizing values and company culture. Key number 4, the last key I've got for you, is a little bit more tactical. It's SOPs, technology, and reporting. As you grow your business, you're inevitably going to be hiring people to do similar or the same types of tasks consistently. And at first, when it's you or maybe 1 or 2 other people, then you can oversee those tasks with kind of an outcome-based management style. Hey, here's the desired outcome. I want you to bring your genius to the table and produce that outcome. I don't care how you do it, just do it and get this outcome. But as more people begin to get involved in touching more things within the business, you're going to need to set some boundaries on how things actually get done, or at least how those things get reported. And so standard operating procedures, or SOPs, become super critical at the juncture in your business when you grow between 3 and 10 people. Now, if you're anything like me, you can actually still lead even a larger or growing team with an outcome-based leadership style, where you're constantly inviting people to bring their genius to the table and solve new problems in new ways and be innovative and solutions-oriented. Not just invite people to be a kind of a cog in the machine, but there still needs to be a record and a report of the process that they took to achieve those outcomes so that it can be critiqued, it can be improved upon, and it can even be corrected. Because eventually the ones who bring the most genius to the table in your company are going to be trusted with a team of their own, right? They're going to be promoted. They're going to climb the ranks in your company. They're going to be trusted with a team of their own, and they're going to need to be able to communicate the genius in them via SOPs, standard operating procedures. And that's going to help them to be able to draw out the genius in their team. So if Isaac, who's sitting right over here off camera, if Isaac, our marketing director, brings his genius to the table, but he doesn't record his processes and document his processes, then he's not going to be able to effectively and efficiently communicate those processes to a new team member. His desired outcome should be for them to take what he has done and improve on it. Because we are a growth-minded company, always adapting, always improving. But if the current process isn't documented and reported clearly, then there's no baseline for us to be able to gauge improvements in the outcome, and it cripples that new hire's ability to bring their genius to the table, right? So having SOPs, clear documented processes for everything that happens in your company becomes absolutely critical to see your company grow and not face a ton of communication challenges, right? And besides, though, just documenting SOPs, utilizing different technology and tools to streamline the flow of information within your company is also equally as important. At our firm, we basically have 3 simple communication tools to manage every single line of communication in our company. Number 1 is we use email for external communication with our investor clients or with anyone who's outside of our company. We then use Slack for all internal communication amongst our team members, and we've got dedicated channels where everybody has visibility into all the conversational flow that happens within the various teams. And then we use Asana for task and project management. Anytime a communication or conversation moves to something that somebody needs to do, then it gets assigned to that person with a deadline, and everyone else has visibility into those tasks, those projects, and those deadlines. And all 3 of those communication tools integrate with each other so that our team can easily move a Slack conversation to a task or an email conversation to a task with just a few keyboard strokes. And so it makes it very efficient. And so creating clear roles and responsibilities to reduce unnecessary communication, right? Using technology, using reporting, creating SOPs, all of those kind of things are absolutely critical to managing communication in a growing company. So let me recap real quick the 4 keys to successfully managing the challenge and navigating the challenge of communication in a growing company. Key number 1, the rule of 3 and 10. Believe in and trust in the legitimacy of the rule of 3 and 10. It'll help you stay ahead of the curve. Key number 2 is stay in your lane as a leader by knowing your strengths and knowing your weaknesses and being transparent and honest about both of those. Key number 3 is build the right team, and early on especially focus on alignment of values and company culture, more heavily weighted when you're vetting your hires. And then key number 4 is the tactical implementation of SOPs, technology, and reporting so that everyone can stay on the same page and everyone has a baseline from which to bring their genius to the table. I hope and believe that all of this has been helpful to you. If you found value in today's episode, then here's what I want you to do. I want you to take a moment right now. I want you to write down one task that you're going to delegate to another team member this week. Just one. Just start with one and then share it in the comments below or on social media using the hashtag scale. And if you want more insights on scaling and growing your business without losing your mind, go ahead and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. Join our community of growth-minded entrepreneurs. Until next time, remember your business can grow without you having to do it all. So now go out there, scale with intent, and own your exit.